So in this video we're going to take a look at a simple Java program that plays a guess the number game, where the program, when you run it, chooses a number between 1 and 1,000, and then you have to guess what that number is. And once you do guess the number, you can choose whether to play again or terminate the application. Now, once we get into the running program, the actual interactions with the program are identical whether I'm doing this on Mac OS, which is what I currently have on the screen, or in Microsoft Windows. So in terms of just getting to the point of running the program, I'll show you the commands in both Mac OS and Windows for the benefit of folks on both sides, and then I'll show you the full running of the program here in my terminal window. Now, the first step is that we have to change into the folder that contains the program. And if you recall from the before you begin, you need to have the examples in a folder called examples within your user account's documents folder, or you have to update the commands that I'm about to show you to indicate where you actually placed our examples on your system. So the first thing I'm going to do is use the cd command, which is for changing directories. Directories are another name for folders. And the simplest way to get into your documents folder on Mac OS is to use a tilde and a /. That is a shorthand for your user account, and then the name of the documents folder. And you can start typing documents and then hit tab, and it'll auto-complete the name if it can. If there's multiple things with a given name, it'll complete to the point that that's unique. And then within the documents folder we have the examples folder, and I'm going to stop there for a moment so that I can just list with the ls command the contents of that folder. And if you recall from the before you begin, there's a separate subfolder for every chapter and lesson in our books and videos. So we're going to be using the chapter 1 folder in this video, so I'll cd to the ch01 folder in this case, and then I'll list out the contents once again. And this is the actual source code file for the program that we'll be running in just a few moments, the guess the number game. Now, .java is the file name extension that you use when you create files containing Java program code, and sometimes you'll have one of those in a given program, sometimes you'll have many of them. And when you compile such a file, you get what's known as a .class file that contains the Java bytecodes that are run by the Java virtual machine, or what some people just refer to as the Java runtime. Java bytecodes are basically Java machine language, and the machine is the Java virtual machine, or the Java runtime, which is a software layer that sits between your Java program and the underlying hardware that it's running on. The reason that Java is sometimes referred to as a write once, run anywhere language is that we translate our Java codes into bytecodes. Those bytecodes can run on any Java virtual machine, and it's the Java virtual machine's responsibility to turn that into something that the underlying computer understands. So we'll come back to here in just a moment to compile and run this program. But before I do that, I want to switch over to Microsoft Windows and get into the same ch01 folder. So I'm going to Command Tab over to my Windows virtual machine. I'm in a Windows PowerShell window at the moment, and just as a reminder, you can open that by just typing the word terminal down in the search window and clicking the terminal option that pops up. So here's terminal, and it'll actually open a Windows PowerShell window. So just like we did on the Mac OS side, we can use the cd command to change folders. The main difference here in Microsoft Windows is that we use backslashes to separate directory structures. So just like on Mac OS, I can use the tilde character to represent my user account, and then I can do a backslash, and my documents folder, I can start typing that and hit tab, and notice that it auto completes the whole thing right up through the documents folder. And remember, we have an example subfolder, and I'll hit enter there just to show you that when I use the dir command on Windows, I can get a directory listing of of all the folder names over on that operating system. And there's the ch1 folder once again. If you want to, you can clear out all the stuff that you see on the screen by just typing the clear command. I'm just going to do that to make the screen a little bit more readable. So I'll do a CD to ch01 next and hit enter, and then I will again use the command for listing out the contents on Windows, which is dir, and we can see the same guessthenumbergame.java source code file over here. So we'll come back here to compile that file in just a moment. Let's switch back over to the terminal on my Mac OS side. The next step that we want to perform is to compile the program. So I'm going to type the javac command, and I'm going to follow that with the file name, and since I'm a terrible typist, I'm just going to copy paste that file name here, and that's the file that we would like to compile. So when I hit enter now, assuming it's able to translate my Java program into Java bytecodes, I will simply get back my next command prompt. But if there were a problem inside the program, like a syntax error, it would then report those error messages to me here at the command line. So after doing that, if I list out the contents here on the Mac OS terminal window, you can see that we now have a .class file and a .java file, and within that .class file are the Java bytecodes that represent the compiled version of my program. And we can do the exact same thing over on the Windows side, so just using the javac command over here, and I'll start to type the name of the file, and for some reason the terminal window puts in a / in front of it. We don't need that, so I'll take it out. But once I hit enter here, it will once again compile the program, and if I do a directory listing, you can see that we now have the .class file and the .java file as well. So we've now successfully compiled the program on both platforms here. And of course, you're probably only working on one of the two platforms, but I'm showing it for the benefit of both Mac OS and Windows users as well. So let's go back over to Mac OS, and now we're going to launch the application. To do that, we're going to use the Java command followed by just the base name of the .class file without the .class extension. So you provide the name of the file that contains what's known as the main method, and we'll see that in our very first program in chapter 2 in the next lesson. But when I launch the Java virtual machine or the Java runtime with the Java command, I do have to tell it the class that starts the program executing, which is the only class in this example. It's called Guess the Number Game. So when I hit enter, I am prompted to guess a number between 1 and 1,000, and we'll come back and actually do the execution of the program in just a moment. I just want to show you that I get the exact same thing over on Windows. So switching back to my Windows, and I'm just going to type clear here so that this shows up towards the top of the screen. We have the Java command followed by the name of the class, but I used auto completion, so it put the full .class file name in. I'm going to get rid of the extras there, so it just says Java followed by the name of the class without the .class extension. And when I hit enter, I get the exact same prompt. Now from this point forward, interacting with either one is exactly the same. The program chooses the same random number whether you're running on Microsoft Windows or Mac OS. So I'm just going to switch back now and complete this video on the terminal window side over in Mac OS. Now if you've ever played this game before, you may know the secret, which is to guess halfway in between the highest and lowest value. So between 1 and 1,000, the halfway point is going to be 500. And in the game it tells me whether my guess is too low or too high. In this case it's too low, so I know I don't need to guess anything from 1 to 499. I need to guess somewhere between 500 and 1,000. And we always choose the halfway point as our next guess. And there's a little computer science behind that. It's basically the algorithm of a binary search for finding something in a sorted collection of values. So I'm going to guess next 750. and that's too high. So now I know I can eliminate everything from 750 up to 1000, and now I'm focused on the values between 500 and 749. And sometimes the range doesn't divide evenly, so I'm going to divide that approximately in half, and I'm going to guess 625 next, and that's too low. So now I'm in between 625 and 750, which is a range of 125 elements. And when I divide that in half, I get about 62. So I'm actually going to guess next 687, and I'm still too high. So now I'm in the range of 625 to 687, which is a 62 element range, and I can divide that in half to get 31. So my next guess is going to be 625 plus 31. So what is that, 656? And I'm too high, so I'm guessing in between 656 and 625. So that's a range of 31 elements, so we divide that about in half, which is about 15. So let's guess 640 next. And now we're in between these two numbers. We're too low on this latest guess. So in between 656 and 640, we've got 16 elements. So our next guess will be 648, which is halfway in between. And I'm too high again, so now we know we're in that smaller range. I'll guess 644 next. And I'm still too high, so I'll do 642 next. And bang, I've guessed the number, and now I've gotten the option to play the game again, for which I can type Y, or to terminate the program, which is what I'll do here by typing N. And if you run the program again, by the way, you'll get the exact same progression of values, because like I said, I did set it up on purpose so that you can follow along and enter the exact same values that I entered. You can go and edit the source code to remove the seeding of the random number generator. We talk about how to seed random number generators when we discuss that issue in chapter 5. So for now, that's the end of the very first example. You are now set up to run our examples, and you know how to compile them. The other thing I wanted to show in this video is that you can run the code file directly. So I'm going to clear the screen for a moment, and I'm going to list out the directory contents again, and I still have the .class file, which I am going to remove right now. So I want to get rid of that because I want to prove to you that I am able to run the Java source code file directly. So after removing that file from the local system, and by the way, if you want to do the same thing on Windows, the command for that instead of RM is del. So let me just go over to Windows to show you that. I'll Control C to terminate that program. So right now we have the two files here, and if I say del followed by guessthenumbergame.class, you can see that I just have the source code file left. Alright, so now we want to run the source code file, and what I'm about to do will work the same way on both Windows and Mac OS, so I'll just do it here from the Mac OS side. So I'm going to use the Java command now, followed by guessthenumbergame.java. So this is a new convenience feature, or a newer convenience feature, geared towards non-programmers and just developers who need to quickly run a file without having to go through the whole compilation and running phase, which can be lengthy in big applications. So what this is going to do is it's going to read the source code from the .java file. It's going to invoke the Java compiler in memory and create the bytecodes for this file in memory. It's immediately going to run those bytecodes, and then as soon as the program is done executing, it is going to terminate and throw away the bytecodes that it generated. So I can go ahead and hit enter here, and it went and ran the program. I'm going to, what was it, 642 was the last guess, so I'll just go right to the last guess and say 642 just to prove to you it's the same random quote unquote number. And I'm not going to play again, so I'll hit N and hit enter. And when I list the contents here, you'll see it's still just the .java source code file. So this is just a quickie convenience feature, which actually is something you can use throughout working with our examples to quickly and conveniently run them all. But I will point out one key thing. Later on, when we start to show you exceptions, which are runtime problems that generate something that you have an opportunity to deal with at execution time in your programs, the exception messages that sometimes get displayed at the command line are quite different when you run the program directly using the Java command versus when you compile and run the program with the javac command followed by the Java command. So I will reiterate that when we do get to a point of working with something that has exceptions. The first one of those will come up in chapter 6 on arrays. There are cases where if you do something wrong before that, you might get an exception as well, but the first place where we really start to consider exceptions is chapter 6, so I'll reiterate it at that point also.